And we're back for episode 2.9. Our episode begins with Stannis leading his fleet in the Battle of the Blackwater. Now this is quite different from the book, as in the book Stannis is on the other side of the Blackwater with his ground forces. His plan is for his fleet to take control of the Blackwater and then ferry his forces across. In the book, his fleet isn't even led by Davos, it's led by Imry Florent, his wife's brother. This is significant as Davos is a cautious man and wanted to send out ships ahead to probe the river. Imry didn't think this necessary because Stannis' fleet was so much bigger than Joffrey's. So at the front of Stannis' fleet are the Florents, followed closely by Davos and the other houses of the Narrow Sea. Then the fleet has mirror sellswords and transport cogs, and bringing up the rear is Salladhor Saan and the Lyseni pirates. This means that Stannis' most loyal followers are doing all of the hard work. They have to take the river and are the first ones into battle. The former supporters of Renly are on the shore and are essentially cleanup. Now here Davos is accompanied by his son, but in the book Davos actually has 3 sons in the battle. 2 kept in their own ships and 1 is an oarsman on the flagship. None of these sons follow the Lord of Light. Now this episode has more extra scenes than any episode we've seen so far. We have Tyrion stressing out about the battle with Shae, and then we have this extra scene where Cersei asks for poison from Pycelle. Interestingly, in the book, Pycelle disappears for the latter half of A Clash of Kings. I assume he was recovering from his time in the Black Cells. We then get this extra scene of Bronn singing with one of Littlefinger's prostitutes, and then the Hound trying to pick a fight with him. We get an extra scene of Tyrion preparing for battle and accusing Varys of being a pedophile, and Varys giving Tyrion a map of the tunnels underneath the city while claiming that he really hates magic. Now Varys really feeds Tyrion's ego in this scene, and it seems like Tyrion is really essential to this battle. However, it's really up for debate. In fact, later on in A Storm of Swords, Tyrion and Tywin have an argument about this. Tywin does eventually concede that Tyrion's role was crucial, though I'm not so sure. You see, in the book, it's Cersei's plan to throw wildfire at the fleet. Tyrion has an extra plan of filling one ship with a bunch of wildfire and then raising a chain behind Stannis' fleet. The chain would trap the fleet in the river, and after the explosion, the flames would head downriver and burn the entire fleet up. However, that doesn't really happen, and we'll get back to this. So battle approaches, and we get some more extra scenes between Tyrion and Bronn about their friendship, and Shae is given a bunch of extra screen time in this episode. Now in the book, Shae is certainly there, attending Lolly's Stokeworth, but we don't really hear about her doing anything. Now next we finally have a scene that's in the book. Joffrey has Sansa kiss his sword before he goes into battle. He holds the sword low to his crotch, and she goes down to kiss it. Now, of course, in this scene, swords are dicks and dicks are swords. Our author makes a lot of comparisons between dicks and swords in the story. In fact, during this scene in the book, Sansa thinks about how Arya threw Joffrey's sword in the river and emasculated him. And this makes me wonder how often our author is trying to make this comparison. When Viserys wore a sword in Vastoth Rock, was he trying to regain his masculinity? Did Jon masculinize Arya when he gave her Needle? When Brienne had to choose between the noose and the sword, was she choosing between femininity and masculinity? The answer to these is probably yes, but how far does it go? Is Jaime's sword hand amputation and Theon's penis amputation supposed to be the same thing? When Ned cleaned his sword beneath the heart tree, was that a metaphorical masturbation? Are Longclaw and the Sword of the Morning dick jokes? Maybe, it's hard to say. Now next we have an extra scene where Lancel is asking Tyrion where Joffrey's ships are. Now in the book we know the answer to this. They're upriver hiding. However, in the book Tyrion sacrifices 10 ships in the river to lure Stannis' fleet in. Now in our next scene Davos senses a trap, which he also does in the book. However, because events happen rather quickly and he's not in command of the fleet, he can't do much about it. Now next we have a scene that's very similar to the book where Cersei, Sansa, and the other women have gathered to wait out the battle. They talk a bit about periods and why Ilyn Payne is there. Cersei says he's there for protection and to punish those that are treasonous. Of course, we find out later that Ilyn Payne is actually there for Cersei's suicide. Cersei fully expects to lose the battle and wants Sir Ilyn to kill her and Sansa and maybe everyone else. Now whether Sir Ilyn would actually do this is debatable. There's some indication that Sir Ilyn has other loyalties, likely Littlefinger, so it's hard to say what Sir Ilyn would do with Stannis' men knocking on the door. Now here in the show, Cersei has given herself two suicide methods. She has Sir Ilyn and she has poison. The poison doesn't make an appearance in the book. Now meanwhile in Blackwater Bay, Tyrion has sent out an empty boat filled with wildfire. In the book, Stannis' fleet is in the river fighting the sacrificial ships. Hidden among these ships is the wildfire ship. Now as in the book, Davos figures out what's going on, but it's a little too late. So next in the show, alchemist Roy Dotrice comes up and gives Tyrion a torch. Tyrion then drops the torch, which signals Bronn, who shoots a flaming arrow at the ship. And then we have explosion. However, in the book it happens a little differently. In Stannis' fleet there's kind of an idiot house called Bar Emmon. Their sigil is a swordfish and they built a ship with a huge swordfish ram. The ship is off balance and really hard to sail. And when all you have is a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail. House Bar Emmon finds the wildfire ship irresistible and rams it. And so Davos watches his son perish, and in the book he watches 3 sons perish. Now although Tyrion's plan is fairly successful, it's not successful enough. And this is why I would argue that Tyrion did not save King's Landing. 30 to 40 of Stannis' ships survive the wildfire, and Salladhor Sand's ships are safely on the other side of the chain. Even though Tyrion destroyed 80% of Stannis' fleet, he still has more than enough ships to ferry over his troops. And for a time, the crashed ships even create a bridge for Stannis' troops. The show has a similar outcome, with many of Stannis' ships surviving and Stannis wanting to go ashore. Meanwhile, at the greatest party ever, Cersei has some extra dialogue about religion, and then, as in the book, she explains why suicide is the only option. Cersei's weapon is sex, and Stannis is not interested in it. Meanwhile on the Blackwater, Stannis is leading men into battle. Now keep in mind, in the book, Stannis is specifically described as a general who leads from the rear. Our hot-headed characters like Robb and Jaime lead from the front. Our calculating characters like Tywin and Stannis lead from the rear. Now next we get this extra scene where Joffrey is getting nervous that Stannis is coming ashore. Now Joffrey is a monster, but we have no indication in the book that he was ever cowardly. During the battle, Tyrion was trying to keep Joffrey safe. He spent the first part of the battle catapulting the antler men naked into the river. He then went to lead crossbowmen. We don't really have any idea if he felt scared during the battle at all. Now next we have an extra scene of the Hound trying to get men into battle, including Lancel. And Lancel looks a bit nervous. In the book there are actually 3 divisions out there defending the castle. There's the Hounds, there's Sir Balon's Swans, and there's Lancel's. The Hound abandons his, and Tyrion has to take it over. And so in our next scene, the soldiers are coming ashore. Now in the book, we actually find out which houses make it to King's Landing. Tyrion runs into Florence, Celtigars, Velaryons, and Bar Emmons. It's all houses from the fleet that survived the explosion. Stannis and all of Renly's supporters are still on the other side of the river. And so next we get a bunch of fighting, and as in the book, Lancel is injured. Now in the book, Lancel nearly dies from this injury and has a complete transformation. Now meanwhile at the party, we have this extra scene where Cersei outs Shae for having a story that doesn't quite make sense. And then Lancel shows up to give an update about the war. Now in the book, this first update is given by Osney Kettleblack. Lancel is far too injured to be going back and forth this much. But the show and the book are similar in that she orders Joffrey to be taken away from the battle. So as in the book, all the wildfire causes the Hound to lose his nerve, and he quits. Tyrion tries to convince him to go back, but he refuses. Here in the show, the Hound says, "Fuck the Kingsguard, fuck the city, fuck the king." He even does this in front of Joffrey. However, in the book, he only says, "Fuck the king's hand." Joffrey isn't even there, so we don't get to see Joffrey's broken heart like we do in the show. In both book and show, a ram is trying to bring down one of the gates. So someone needs to go outside and take this ram down. Here in the show, Tyrion requests that Joffrey lead a force to do it. Joffrey gets out of it by claiming that his mother needs him. Now in the book, Joffrey is off with the crossbowmen, so this isn't even an option. So in both book and show, Tyrion steps up to lead the force. He largely shames the men by claiming if they don't go out, they're worse than dwarves. Now in the show, the last line of his battle speech, "Those are brave men out there, let's kill them," is actually from a different part of the battle. Tyrion simply says it to Balon's swan as a joke on the side. Now in both book and show, Lancel shows up and confronts Cersei about taking Joffrey from the battle, and she hits Lancel in his wound. Now at this point in the book, Sansa actually saves Lancel's life. She orders that Lancel be brought to a maester. Now at this point in the show, Sansa sings a very important song. She sings the Mother Song, and in the book she sings this to the Hound. It's perhaps the most important scene of the entire book series. Sadly, this scene has been largely cut from the show. You see, Sansa is told to go hide in a room by Shae in the show and Dantos in the book. And so Sansa goes to her room only to find the Hound there. Now in the show, the Hound simply wants to rescue Sansa. But in the book, things are very different. He's there to rape and murder her. He throws her on the bed, puts a knife to her throat, and tells her to sing him a song. And so she sings the Mother Song, a pro-peace song. It's the entire point of the book series. It saves Sansa's life and transforms the Hound from a villain to a hero. Now meanwhile outside, Tyrion's forces have stopped the ram and have continued on fighting. However, as in the book, Tyrion is attacked by Sir Mandon Moore. In the show, Tyrion gets a slice across the face, but in the show, Tyrion's nose is cut off. Mandon Moore is probably a Littlefinger crony doing Littlefinger's business here. Sir Mandon comes from the Vale and was put on the Kingsguard by Lysa Tully. Now in both book and show, Podrick Payne ends up killing Mandon Moore. But let's remember that in the book, Pod is only about 12 years old. Now next we have this extra scene where Cersei is trying to get Tommen to commit suicide with her. In the book, Tommen is off at a mystery location with Jacelyn Bywater. Bywater is of course one of Varys' cronies, and Joffrey is being guarded by Osney Kettleblack, one of Littlefinger's cronies. So it seems neither boy was in danger of being killed, but kidnapped. Meanwhile outside, a mystery force has arrived being led by a mystery knight. In the book, this mystery knight is Garland Tyrell, and he's dressed up as Renly's ghost. This was Littlefinger's idea, and it causes massive confusion in Stannis' ranks. Stannis is able to escape, but most of his ground forces are either killed or captured. Tywin and the Tyrells have saved the city. And that's all for episode 2.9. See you in episode 2.10.